There's a fire that burns in every man who dares to create. It begins as a whisper, a thought that maybe, just maybe, he can build something that lasts beyond his own lifetime. Something that matters. Something that leaves a mark on the world that once made him feel small. That whisper turns into hunger, and hunger turns into obsession. The kind that keeps you awake at night, sketching ideas, chasing improvement, pushing past the limits that once felt immovable. At first, it feels holy, almost divine, this pursuit of purpose through creation. You tell yourself it's about impact, about helping others, about doing something good. But somewhere along the way, that sacred fire starts consuming more than you ever intended to offer. It takes your rest, your peace, your laughter, your softness. You become a machine built to produce meaning, forgetting that the one producing it also needs meaning to survive. Ambition is not evil. It's the reason humanity moves forward, the reason innovation exists. But ambition without awareness? That's the beginning of spiritual decay. You start chasing results instead of truth. Validation replaces authenticity. You build a world that applauds you, but that applause starts to sound like chains when you're no longer free to live without it. There's a line from the Stoics that says, asterisk, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." Asterisk, and in modern life, that craving takes on new forms. It's not just money or status. It's relevance. It's recognition. It's the illusion that being seen equals being fulfilled. So we pour ourselves into the creation, the project, the business, the art, the dream, believing that one day, once it's complete, the inner emptiness will quiet. But it never does. You begin to mistake motion for meaning, productivity for peace. You wear your exhaustion like a badge of honor, not realizing that the fatigue you feel is not from working too hard, it's from working disconnected from your soul. You think the goal is to build something great, but the truth is, the greater challenge is to build yourself while you build it. Because if what you create grows faster than your own self-awareness, it will outgrow you. And when it does, it won't serve you, it will consume you. Let's be honest, society doesn't reward balance. It rewards sacrifice. It romanticizes burnout. It praises the man who gives everything to his mission, even if that mission devours him. You'll hear quotes like, "Sleep when you're dead," and "Grind until you make it," but no one tells you what happens after you make it and you're too numb to feel anything at all. No one tells you that success without inner stillness becomes its own form of suffering. But wisdom, real wisdom, asks you to pause. It asks you to question the voice that tells you more is always better. It asks you to stand in the middle of your progress and ask, asterisk, who am I becoming through all this? Asterisk, because if what you're building requires you to lose yourself, it's not growth, it's erosion. The ancients knew this truth well. They spoke of balance, of temperance, of the harmony between outer achievement and inner alignment. The samurai called it seishin toitsu, the unity of spirit and body. The Stoics called it eudaimonia, the flourishing of one's soul through virtue, not success. Every great tradition points to the same principle. To build something meaningful, you must remain whole while building it. So what does this look like in our world, in the age of deadlines, metrics, and digital validation? It looks like intentional stillness. It looks like giving yourself one quiet hour each day to simply exist. No screens, no tasks, no goals. Just presence. It looks like remembering that you are not your output. You are the awareness behind it. And if that awareness fades, so will the purpose behind your work. Try this. Once a week, disconnect from your creation. Step away from the progress, the updates, the numbers. Spend that time asking one question: what do I actually feel when I'm not producing? You might be surprised how foreign that silence feels. That's because you've forgotten how to just be. But that silence, uncomfortable as it is where your real power hides. It's where truth begins to rebuild you from within. You see, the point of the first part of this journey isn't to reject ambition. It's to purify it. To transform the desire to build into a deeper desire to become. Because creation is sacred, but only when the creator remembers himself. Only when he understands that he is part of the thing he's building, not just its architect. Every empire that's ever fallen started with a builder who lost himself in the bricks. Don't let that be your story. Let your ambition be guided, not blind. Let your progress be grounded, not frantic. Let your fire burn bright, but never without balance. And as you walk forward, remember this: what you build can change lives, yes, but it can also change you. And if you're not careful, you'll wake up one day surrounded by everything you ever wanted, and no longer recognize the man who wanted it. This is where the journey begins, not with achievement, but with awareness. Because before you can build something that changes lives, you must first build the strength to not lose your own. The work consumes everything. Slowly, quietly, relentlessly. At first, it feels like devotion, the kind of dedication that heroes are made of. You wake before the sun, you sacrifice your evenings, you give up comfort in exchange for creation. The world applauds that. They call you disciplined, focused, hungry. But beneath the surface, something sacred begins to slip away: your sense of self. You tell yourself this is what greatness demands, that losing balance is just part of the climb. But every time you skip rest, every time you ignore your own voice, every time you trade presence for productivity, a small fracture forms inside you. And one day, those fractures become too deep to ignore. It's a strange irony that you can spend years building something that changes lives while your own begins to crumble in silence. You might still smile, still speak with conviction, still post the right words. But the person behind those gestures starts to disappear. You're there, but not really. You exist in function, not in fullness. There's a quote often attributed to Carl Jung, asterisk, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent." Asterisk, but it's not just about parenthood. It's about the unlived life within us all, the part that waits patiently behind the work, asking, "When will it be my turn?" We think we can silence it by achieving more, but it only grows louder. The soul was never meant to be managed, it was meant to be met. And this is where the pain deepens. Because success, once your salvation, becomes your disguise. You tell the world you're fine, you've built, you've grown, you've achieved. Yet, you can't remember the last time you felt truly alive. The last time you laughed without checking your phone. The last time you built something purely out of joy, not obligation. The modern world rewards this self-erasure. It gives medals to the most burnt out, celebrates the most overworked, praises those who never stop grinding. But beneath that culture of endless doing lies a deep spiritual poverty, a disconnection from being. We've mistaken movement for meaning. We've replaced peace with progress. And the more we chase, the further we drift from ourselves. Ancient wisdom warned us about this. The Tao Te Ching said, asterisk, "He who conquers others is strong. He who conquers himself is mighty." Asterisk, but few are interested in conquering themselves, because that requires stillness, reflection, vulnerability. And in a world of noise and speed, stillness feels like death. Yet, it's the only thing that brings life back. So how does one reclaim themselves from the jaws of their own creation? It begins with honesty. Brutal, unfiltered honesty. You have to face the reality that your achievements might be compensations. That the empire you're building could be a fortress hiding your fear. That your constant busyness might be an escape from the silence that would reveal what's missing inside. It's not weakness to admit this, it's wisdom. Because once you see the truth, you can begin to restore balance. The principle is simple. Your creation should serve your becoming, not consume it. Every project, every goal, every mission should bring you closer to your authentic self, not further away. If it costs your peace, your presence, your connection to others, it's too expensive, no matter how much it pays. Try this, once a day, pause and ask yourself one question. Is what I'm building feeding me or draining me? Be ruthless with the answer. If it drains you, it doesn't mean you quit, it means you realign. You adjust how you approach it. You introduce moments of breath into the grind. You remember that you are not a machine, you are a soul temporarily disguised as one. Reclaiming yourself doesn't mean walking away from your mission. It means remembering why you started it. It means finding beauty in the process again, the small, human moments that made you want to create in the first place. It means allowing silence to exist without guilt, and letting success coexist with serenity. You can't live fully if you're only living for the next milestone. Life happens in the space between the wins, in the unrecorded, unposted moments where no one's watching. That's where you meet yourself again. That's where you realize that you were never meant to be a product of your work, but its caretaker. And when you begin to live from that truth, the very nature of your creation changes. Your work stops being a burden and becomes a reflection. It carries your wholeness, not your wounds. People can feel the difference, because energy doesn't lie. A creation made from balance carries peace. One made from emptiness carries noise. The journey from self-erasure to self-restoration isn't glamorous. It doesn't look like success. It looks like quiet evenings, difficult honesty, maybe even tears. But it's there, in that silence, that the real transformation begins. You start to feel again, to listen again, to rebuild not the empire, but the man within it. So let this be your reminder: achievement without alignment is just a prettier form of loss. The goal is not to build something that changes others while you fade. The goal is to become someone whose presence changes the world, not through what you make, but through who you are becoming as you make it. As you stand in the middle of your progress, surrounded by the noise of more, take a breath. Ask yourself, if I lose myself in this, what will any of it mean? That question is not weakness, it's strength. Because from that question, the awakening begins. From that moment of truth, the rebuilding of your soul starts, and that's where the next chapter unfolds. The awakening doesn't come with a flash of light or a thunderous realization. It comes quietly, in the middle of your exhaustion. It's that night when you stare at the screen, surrounded by success, yet feel utterly hollow. It's the pause between tasks where your hands tremble, not from overwork, but from the quiet recognition that something within you is missing. This is the moment when the noise begins to fade and the silence, the kind you've been avoiding for years, finally speaks. You've built, achieved, sacrificed, and yet, peace escapes you. You once believed that meaning was earned through exhaustion, that rest was weakness, and that fulfillment was waiting on the other side of your goals. But now, as the dust settles, you see it. The empire you built stands tall, but your soul is nowhere in its foundations. You thought success would fill the void, but it only made it echo louder. This is the paradox of achievement, that it can elevate you in the eyes of others while burying you beneath the weight of your own neglect. You realize that you have mastered the art of creation but forgotten the art of connection. Connection to self, to stillness, to life beyond doing. What once inspired you has become a mirror, reflecting your absence back at you. In this stillness, wisdom begins to whisper. You remember the teachings buried under years of striving. The Buddha said, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. You've given your compassion to others, your dedication to the mission, your energy to progress, but none of it to yourself. And now, the debt of neglect has come due. You sit in the quiet and realize, the work was never the problem. The problem was how you defined yourself through it. You made your worth conditional, on progress, on approval, on constant motion. But a man who can only feel valuable when he's producing is a man forever enslaved to his own ambition. True freedom begins when you learn to exist without needing to prove anything. Modern life doesn't prepare us for this awakening. It teaches us how to chase, not how to rest. How to build, not how to be. How to measure, not how to feel. But the truth is, the most productive thing you can sometimes do is nothing. To sit in reflection, to breathe deeply, to allow your being to catch up with your doing. Because if your inner life doesn't evolve alongside your outer achievements, imbalance becomes inevitable. Think about it. How many people do you know who have everything they once dreamed of, and yet, their eyes look tired? Their laughter sounds forced. Their presence feels distant. That's not because they failed, it's because they never stopped to integrate what they built. They reached the mountain's peak but never learned how to breathe in the thin air of stillness. The awakening invites you to remember what truly matters. Not what you're building, but why you're building it. Is it to fill the emptiness inside, or to express the fullness of your being? Because one leads to addiction, the other to peace. The purpose of creation is not to escape yourself, but to express yourself. To turn the invisible, your thoughts, your spirit, your essence, into something that reminds others of their own. And yet, this awakening hurts. It shatters the illusion of control. It exposes the truth that success cannot save you from yourself. You have to save yourself from the false idea that your worth is tied to what you achieve. You have to unlearn the pride that tells you rest is laziness, and humility that tells you you're not enough unless you're striving. There's a passage from Marcus Aurelius. Men seek retreats for themselves, houses in the country, seashores and mountains, and you too are wont to desire such things. But this is altogether a mark of the most common sort of men. For it is in your power whenever you shall choose to retire into yourself. That's what awakening is, realizing that your greatest retreat, your greatest freedom, is not found in escape but in returning home to your own presence. So what's the practice here? Start by embracing stillness as strength, not weakness. Find one ritual each day that connects you back to yourself. Meditation, walking without headphones, journaling, breathing. Not as a task, but as a reunion. The goal is not to stop creating, it's to create from alignment. When you build from peace, your work stops draining you and starts feeding you. Here's a truth that the awakened come to understand. Balance is not found in the absence of ambition, but in the mastery of it. You don't need to abandon your dreams to reclaim your soul. You need to bring your soul into your dreams. Let your goals become an extension of your inner calm, not a substitute for it. You begin to see that the exhaustion you've carried was never just physical, it was spiritual. You were starving for meaning while feeding yourself with milestones. And when you finally stop running, when you let silence hold you, you realize that peace was never hiding from you. You were hiding from it. And now, as your awareness deepens, the tension begins to dissolve. You feel lighter, not because the world has changed, but because your relationship to it has. You understand now that the true measure of a man is not what he builds, but what remains when the building stops. The awakening humbles you. It strips away the illusion that constant motion equals progress. It teaches you to honor the pause, because the pause is where wisdom breathes. And as you begin to live with more presence, more peace, more clarity, you notice something extraordinary. The same creation that once consumed you now begins to serve you. This is the quiet transformation, the turning point, the moment the builder remembers he is more than his work. That in the stillness of exhaustion lies the first spark of renewal. That losing yourself was never the end, it was the doorway to something deeper, something truer. And as you step through that doorway, you begin to understand. Creation without balance is just expansion without direction. It's time to find your center again, because from that center, your next act will not just change lives. It will restore them, starting with your own. Truth arrives softly, like dawn. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It simply unveils what's always been there, waiting for you to be quiet enough to see it. After years of chasing, striving, building, you wake up and realize, the most meaningful thing you will ever construct isn't outside of you. It's within. You begin to see that the purpose you sought through achievement was never hiding in the empire you built. It was written in the way you chose to build it. Every decision, every sacrifice, every sleepless night was never about the thing itself, but about who you became through it. You were always shaping something far greater than a product, a career, or a legacy. You were shaping your spirit. That's the nature of truth. It hides beneath the noise of progress, disguised as failure, exhaustion, or emptiness, until you're ready to listen. And when you finally do, it doesn't tell you to stop building. It tells you to build differently. It tells you to infuse your creation with intention, to let it reflect balance instead of burnout, meaning instead of motion. There's an ancient teaching in the Bhagavad Gita that says, you have the right to the work, but not to the fruits of the work. It means this: Your fulfillment cannot be attached to the outcome, because the outcome is never fully yours. Only the process is. When you build from ego, you crave control. When you build from presence, you create with freedom. The truth liberates you from the need for validation because you no longer build to be seen, you build to serve. And in that realization, peace returns. Not as an escape, but as alignment. You start to understand that purpose isn't about scale, it's about depth. The size of your impact matters less than the sincerity behind it. The truth doesn't ask for more, it asks for meaning. And meaning doesn't grow from noise, but from stillness. In a world obsessed with expansion, slowing down feels like rebellion. But that's exactly what truth demands, rebellion against the illusion that more always means better. Truth asks you to stop chasing growth and start cultivating grace. To replace the question, how much have I done, with how deeply have I lived? Because one builds empires, but the other builds eternity. You start to remember that before you were a builder, you were a being. Before you created, you were created. The breath in your lungs, the beat of your heart, these are reminders that existence itself is the first gift. Everything you build after that is an offering, not an obligation. When you see your work as an offering, the pressure dissolves. You no longer need it to complete you, because you're creating from wholeness, not from lack. This truth changes the way you move through the world. You begin to lead with gratitude instead of greed. You create with humility instead of haste. You speak from depth instead of noise. Your presence itself becomes your message. The work doesn't consume you anymore because it no longer defines you, it expresses you. You're no longer building to escape your emptiness, you're building to share your fullness. In this light, even your failures change meaning. They're no longer evidence of inadequacy, they're teachers. They strip away illusion, forcing you to refine your motives, to purify your intentions. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this trying to teach me? Every setback becomes a mirror reflecting the parts of you that still need alignment. And when that shift happens, something remarkable occurs. Your life and your work begin to merge. There's no longer a divide between who you are and what you do. You no longer play two roles, the public achiever and the private struggler. The masks fall away. You show up the same in solitude as you do in success. That unity, that integrity, is where true power lives. The Stoics called it arete, excellence of character. Not excellence of outcome, but of spirit. To live and act in harmony with truth. That's the essence of purpose. That's the mark of a man who no longer needs to prove his worth through what he builds, because his worth is rooted in who he is when no one's watching. So how do you live this truth daily, in a world that demands constant motion? Start by redefining success. Measure it not by how much you accumulate, but by how much of yourself you keep in the process. Success is not the applause, it's the peace. It's being able to look in the mirror and recognize the man staring back. It's the quiet knowing that you didn't abandon yourself in the name of progress. Then, build rituals that anchor you to that truth. Morning stillness before the world begins. Gratitude before every decision. Reflection before every pursuit. Not because you're trying to be spiritual, but because you're trying to stay human. The truth is simple, but it requires discipline to remember. You are not here to perform, you are here to become. The world might never understand this kind of success, the kind measured in inner freedom rather than outer noise. But that doesn't matter. The few who live by it shine differently. They move through chaos with calm, through uncertainty with faith. They've traded the race for rhythm, the grind for grace. And their lives radiate something technology can't replicate: presence. When you reach this point, you no longer fear losing what you've built, because what's real cannot be taken. You've built it in the one place that never collapses, within yourself. The empire outside may change, but the kingdom within stands still. This is the truth the exhausted builder finally discovers. What you create is only as strong as the piece you build it from. The purpose of your work was never to make you known, but to make you whole. And as this truth takes root, you begin to move differently. Slower, lighter, wiser. You no longer rush toward success. You walk with it. You no longer build to escape pain. You build to express understanding. You begin to see that your work was never the destination. It was the practice that taught you how to return home to yourself. And from that home, the next evolution begins. Not in empire, but in essence. Not in doing more, but in being more. The dawn of truth has broken. The light has returned. And the man who once lost himself is learning, at last, to live in the balance between creation and peace. He begins to rebuild, not his empire, but his inner foundation. The work outside pauses, the work inside begins. For the first time in a long time, he is not driven by urgency, but by understanding. He's no longer chasing clarity, he's cultivating it. He realizes now that success without peace is just motion without direction. So he starts again, quietly, deliberately, rebuilding himself from the inside out. This is the part most people never reach, the rebuilding phase. It doesn't come with applause. There's no audience for it, no highlight reel. It's a lonely, sacred process of meeting the man behind the mask. He begins to ask new questions, not what am I building, but who am I becoming? Not how can I do more, but how can I be more? The shift seems small, but it changes everything. Discipline returns, but it's different now. Before, it was driven by fear of falling behind. Now it's guided by the desire to stay aligned. He no longer forces progress. He flows with purpose. His habits aren't born from pressure, but from peace. He still wakes early, still works hard, but it's not to conquer, it's to connect. To connect his effort to his essence, his creation to his calm. He learns that solitude isn't loneliness, it's maintenance. It's how the soul resets itself after years of neglect. He no longer runs from silence, he welcomes it like an old friend. In solitude, he hears the subtle rhythm of his own existence, the sound of life without noise, of being without expectation. That rhythm becomes his compass. This is where the real transformation happens, not in public, but in private. You don't see it on social media. You can't capture it in a quote. It's the quiet kind of strength that grows when you stop performing and start listening. The world calls it slowing down. But in truth, it's acceleration, toward wisdom, toward peace, toward authenticity. There's a Japanese concept called kaizen, continuous improvement. Most people apply it to business, to craft, to process. But few apply it to the soul. The man who once built things that changed lives now practices kaizen on himself. Each day, one small improvement, a calmer reaction, a more mindful breath, a deeper conversation, a softer word. Growth no longer looks like expansion, it looks like refinement. And through that refinement, he rediscovers a truth that ambition once buried. Peace and progress are not opposites. They are partners. Peace gives progress its direction. Progress gives peace its purpose. When the two move together, your life stops feeling like a battle and starts feeling like art. He starts noticing things he used to overlook, the way sunlight filters through the blinds, the weight of gratitude in a single breath, the quiet pride in doing something well without needing anyone to notice. These small moments become sacred. They are proof that fulfillment was never about the grand achievement. It was about awareness, presence, and the integrity behind each step. His relationship with his work transforms. The creation that once consumed him now becomes an expression of his wholeness. He no longer works to escape pain, he works to express understanding. He doesn't grind to prove his worth, he moves to serve his truth. And paradoxically, that makes his work more powerful. Because people can feel when something is built from peace, it carries a frequency that noise can't imitate. You see, there's a quiet form of strength that comes from inner discipline. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that endures. The discipline to rest when your ego wants to prove. The discipline to listen when you want to argue. The discipline to move slowly in a world addicted to speed. That kind of strength doesn't build empires, it builds men. and men built from that stillness change everything they touch. To rebuild, he also learns forgiveness, not as weakness, but as renewal. He forgives himself for the years he spent blind, for the people he hurt unintentionally, for the time he traded for validation. Forgiveness becomes the soil where growth can finally take root. Without it, he realizes, no amount of progress can feel pure. You cannot rebuild on resentment, it cracks the foundation every time. And from that forgiveness grows something rare, gentleness. Not softness, but grace under control. He still carries fire, but it's guided now, tempered, controlled by wisdom rather than impulse. He understands that true masculinity isn't domination, it's direction. It's having power but choosing peace. It's having ambition but serving truth. He begins to share this new energy with others, not by preaching, but by presence. People feel safer around him, calmer. His words carry weight because they come from stillness. His actions inspire because they come from peace. He no longer leads by demanding, he leads by demonstrating. He has become the kind of man whose balance inspires others to seek their own. The exercise now is simple, but profound: integration. Take what you've learned in solitude and bring it into movement. Take your awareness into the world of noise. Take your peace into the battlefield of modern life. Because that's where it's tested, not in silence, but in chaos. If you can remain centered there, you've mastered the art of rebuilding. Every morning, before the day begins, he reminds himself, I am not here to outrun the world. I am here to outgrow myself. That one sentence becomes his compass. And every night before rest, he reflects on one question: did I move from peace or from pressure today? This is how he keeps his inner structure strong, not by controlling life, but by staying aligned with it. And in time, something remarkable happens. He doesn't just rebuild himself, he begins to rebuild his life from a new foundation. His relationships deepen. His creativity expands. His purpose feels lighter, freer. The fire that once burned him now warms him. The empire that once enslaved him now serves him. He has not become less ambitious, only more aware. His drive remains, but now it's anchored in peace. That's the paradox of real growth. When you stop chasing, everything you once chased begins to flow toward you. Because you're no longer demanding from life, you're aligned with it. You've become a vessel, not a victim. And that, right there, is power. The man who once built something that changed lives but lost himself in it, is now building again, this time, with balance. And as he rebuilds, he understands that the most important structure he will ever maintain isn't made of steel or ideas. It's made of presence, honesty, and peace. He's learning to live by a new creed, one that says, your success means nothing if your soul is starving. And as that truth settles deep into his bones, he smiles. Because for the first time, he's not building to escape who he was. He's building to honor who he's become. And that, my friend, is the foundation of freedom. In reflection, he finally understands, changing lives is not enough if one's own life remains lost. The empire, the achievements, the applause, they were chapters, not the story. He sees now that the highest form of creation is not what you build outside of yourself, but what you sustain within. The journey was never about success. It was about wholeness. And the man who once chased meaning now lives it, quietly, intentionally, in every breath. He looks back at his old self, the builder consumed by ambition, by noise, by need, and feels no resentment. Only gratitude. Because even that lostness had purpose. It broke him open so that he could learn balance. It taught him that peace isn't something you find at the end of the road. It's something you practice every step of the way. He realizes that every collapse was an invitation to rebuild stronger, softer, truer. We spend so much of our lives chasing the horizon, thinking that meaning lives somewhere beyond the next milestone. But when you stop running, you realize the horizon is within. The world you were trying to fix was a mirror of your own imbalance. And when the mirror clears, you see that thriving in change, in chaos, in uncertainty, it's not about control. It's about alignment. It's about meeting life with calm strength, not desperate effort. He begins to live differently now. The mornings are slower. The air feels heavier with gratitude. The silence that once scared him now soothes him. He doesn't need constant movement anymore. He moves when it matters. He doesn't need recognition. He works in anonymity, content with the quiet knowing that his presence alone is contribution enough. His definition of success has evolved from impact to integrity. He lives by a simple code: to build, but not to lose himself in the building. To give, but not to drain his spirit in the giving. To lead, but never to forget to listen. To serve, but also to sit. Because balance, that's the real revolution. In a world addicted to excess, balance is rebellion. Balance is mastery. Balance is freedom. And freedom, he now knows, is not the absence of responsibility. It's the presence of peace within responsibility. It's being able to carry weight without being crushed by it. It's working hard while staying soft. It's standing firm in storms without losing your gentleness. It's knowing that you can chase excellence without abandoning yourself in the process. The great Stoics, the samurai, the sages, they all taught this in their own way. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And now, that line feels different. Because self-mastery isn't dominance, it's harmony. It's the ability to stay centered no matter what the world throws at you. It's to build something powerful, but remain unshaken when it trembles. And so he reflects. He thinks of all the lives his creation changed. He feels pride, yes, but also humility. Because he knows now that every impact was just a reflection of the man he was becoming. The real legacy is not the thing you leave behind, it's the energy you bring to every act of creation. It's the peace that lingers after you're gone, the calm others feel when they remember you. He starts living from that truth. Every action, every conversation, every choice becomes an extension of his stillness. His discipline is no longer about control, but about alignment. His ambition no longer burns wildly, it glows steadily. He's learned that the strongest flame doesn't roar, it hums. Quietly, confidently, endlessly. There's a maturity in this phase, a kind of calm authority that doesn't need to prove itself. He knows who he is now. He doesn't chase validation because he's no longer at war with himself. His inner world and outer world are finally one. He's learned to honor the cycle, to build, to break, to rebuild, and to rest. Not as separate phases, but as one continuous rhythm of becoming. And as he walks forward, not toward more, but toward meaning, the world begins to mirror his peace. The people around him soften. The chaos around him slows. Because energy, after all, is contagious. When one man becomes still, he gives others permission to do the same. This is how change spreads, not through revolution, but through presence. Not through noise, but through example. So he keeps building. But this time, his empire is invisible, made of discipline, gratitude, stillness, and love. This time, he's not building to be remembered. He's building to be real. Because what's remembered fades, what's real endures. And in this final understanding, he returns to the truth he had been chasing all along, that fulfillment is not a destination, but a daily decision. Every morning you choose peace over pressure. Every night you choose reflection over distraction. Every day you choose presence over performance. That's the quiet discipline of a man who has come home to himself. So he stands there, not triumphant, not broken, just whole. The noise of the world hums in the background, but he's no longer part of it. He's part of something deeper now. Something timeless. He looks at his creation, the thing that once consumed him, and finally smiles. Because now he sees it for what it is, not a monument to his success, but a mirror of his becoming. He built something that changed lives, yes. But now he understands the greater truth, that the only creation truly worth perfecting is the one within. The only legacy that matters is inner peace. And the only success that endures is living a life where you no longer have to lose yourself to find purpose. And so the builder becomes the balanced. The creator becomes the calm. The man who once lost himself in his creation has finally found himself within it.